History remembers the names: Stalingrad, Normandy, the Battle of the Bulge. These were the titans of World War II, the battles that shaped our world. But what if I told you the single deadliest battle of the entire war, a conflict that claimed more lives than Stalingrad and D-Day combined, has been almost entirely forgotten? What if the most brutal, sprawling, and consequential clash of armies is a name you've likely never even heard? This is the story of a battle so immense, so horrific, it was deliberately buried by history. Welcome to the unknown Eastern Front. We often think of the war in the East as Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, followed by the turning point at Stalingrad in 1943, and the final push to Berlin. But this simplifies a vast, continuous conflict into a few key moments. The deadliest fighting didn't happen in one city or on one beach. It was a series of massive, interconnected operations spanning thousands of miles, collectively known as the Battles of RZHEV. Never heard of it? You're not alone. The Soviets themselves called it DRZEV, meat grinder, and for decades, they did everything they could to make the world forget it ever happened. So where was RZHEV? It was a small city west of Moscow. To the German high command, it was the cornerstone of their front line, a dagger pointed at the heart of the Soviet Union. From late 1941 to the spring of 1943, the German Ninth Army, under the brilliant and ruthless General Walter Model, fortified this area into an almost impenetrable fortress. For Stalin, the Rzhev salient, this bulge in the German lines, was an intolerable threat. He became obsessed with its destruction, ordering one suicidal offensive after another to crush it. The first major assault began in January 1942, part of a massive Soviet winter. The Red Army, emboldened by their success in stopping the Germans at the gates of Moscow, threw wave after wave of soldiers against the fortified German positions. But this wasn't like the open plains of the south. This was a land of dense forests, deep snow, and frozen mud. The Germans had spent months digging in, creating a labyrinth of trenches, bunkers, and machine gun nests. Soviet soldiers, often poorly equipped and with little artillery support, charged into a wall of fire. The losses were catastrophic. Entire divisions were wiped out in a matter of days. Imagine the scene. Temperatures plummeting to -40 degrees. Soldiers freezing to death in their foxholes. The wounded left to die in the snow because evacuation was impossible. Ammunition and food were so scarce that men were fighting with bayonets and starving. Soviet paratroopers were dropped behind German lines, only to be encircled and hunted down for weeks in the brutal cold. Yet, Stalin would not relent. He saw any retreat or pause as cowardice. The attacks continued relentlessly through February, March, and into the spring. The snow melted to reveal a carpet of corpses, a landscape of pure horror. The Germans held on, but at a tremendous cost. They too were bleeding, their elite units ground down in the constant attritional warfare. After a brief lull in the spring of 1942, the meat grinder started up again. In Sumer, the Soviets launched their second major offensive, codenamed Operation Mars. This was supposed to be the decisive blow, commanded by one of the Soviet Union's most famous generals, Georgy Zhukov, the man who would later take Berlin. This operation was even larger than the winter assault. It was planned to coincide with Operation Uranus, the famous encirclement of the German Sixth Army. While the world's attention was focused on the south, the real bloodbath was secretly unfolding near Rzhev. Zhukov amassed over 500,000 men and thousands of tanks and aircraft. The plan was to smash through the German lines in a classic pincer movement, encircling and annihilating the entire German Ninth Army. On paper, it was a brilliant strategy. In reality, it was a disaster. German intelligence had learned of the Soviet plans. General Model anticipated every move. When the Soviet tanks rolled forward, they ran into deep, well-prepared anti-tank defenses. The infantry advanced into perfectly sighted machine gun fields. The sky, which was supposed to be dominated by the Soviet Air Force, was contested by veteran Luftwaffe pilots. The fighting in Operation Mars was perhaps the most intense of the entire war. It was a battle of attrition in its purest, most hellish form. For a month, the Red Army battered itself against the German defenses. Villages and hills changed hands a dozen times a day. The casualty rates were beyond comprehension. Soviet rifle divisions were losing thousands of men daily, being reinforced and then sent back into the slaughter. Zhukov, known for his ruthlessness, kept pushing, feeding more and more men into the grinder, convinced that one more push would break the Germans. But Model's defenses bent. They buckled, but they never broke. By mid-December, it was clear that Operation Mars had failed. It was a catastrophic defeat, one of the greatest of Zhukov's career. So why has this monumental battle been forgotten? The reason is simple: propaganda and shame. For the Soviets, the Urzev battles were a string of humiliating and costly failures. At the same time that they were achieving their glorious victory at Stalingrad, a victory that became the cornerstone of Soviet wartime mythology, they were suffering this devastating loss under their top commander. Admitting the scale of the defeat at Urzev would have tarnished the image of Zhukov and the supposed invincibility of the Red Army. So, they simply erased it. In official Soviet histories, Operation Mars was downplayed as a minor diversionary attack. The staggering casualties were hidden, the records sealed. The battle simply vanished from the official narrative. It became a ghost, a whispered horror story among veterans, but not a part of history. The total human cost of the Urzev battles is almost impossible to calculate accurately, but modern estimates by historians, piecing together German and newly declassified Russian archives, are staggering. Across the various operations from early 1942 to March 1943, the total Soviet casualties killed, wounded, and captured are estimated to be somewhere between 1.5 and 2.3 million men. That's an average of over 4,000 casualties every single day for over a year. Let that sink in. More men were lost here than the United States and Great Britain lost in the entire war, combined. The German Ninth Army, though victorious in holding the line, was bled white, losing around 500,000 men. In March of 1943, something anticlimactic happened. The Germans, weakened by the fighting and needing to shorten their lines after the disaster at Stalingrad, simply withdrew. Operation, the German codename for the retreat, was a masterfully executed withdrawal. They pulled back to a new, more defensible line, leaving behind a wasteland. When the Red Army finally entered the city of Urzev, they found a ghost town. Of the pre-war population of over 50,000, fewer than 200 people remained. The rest of the area was a desolate moonscape of craters, ruins, and countless graves. The Soviets declared it a great victory, the liberation of Urzev. But the soldiers who walked through the ruins knew the truth. They had liberated a cemetery. There was no glory here, only the stench of death and the memory of 1 million lost comrades. For decades, the veterans of Urzev were told not to speak of their experience. They were the survivors of a battle that officially didn't really matter. While Stalingrad veterans were hailed as heroes, the men of the meat grinder were expected to remain silent. Today, the fields and forests around Urzev are still giving up their dead. Local volunteer groups, known as diggers, spend their weekends searching the old battlefields, recovering the remains of soldiers from all sides. They find bones, helmets, rusted weapons, and personal effects: a locket, a letter, a photograph. Each discovery is a fragment of a story that history tried to forget. In 2020, a massive new memorial was finally unveiled near Urzev. It depicts a towering statue of a Soviet soldier, his form dissolving into a flock of cranes, a powerful image from a famous Russian poem about fallen soldiers. It's a belated but vital acknowledgement of the sacrifice. The story of the Urzev battles is a chilling reminder that history is written by the victors, and sometimes even the victors choose to bury their most painful memories. It forces us to ask, what other stories, what other colossal struggles and sacrifices have been lost to time, erased for the sake of a simpler, more heroic narrative? The Urzev meat grinder wasn't just a battle. It was an abyss that consumed millions. And remembering it isn't about assigning blame or glorifying war. It's about honoring the truth and paying respect to every single soldier who was thrown into that forgotten hell. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe for more dives into the hidden corners of history.